Has Chadwick actually got round to building that bridge? Marvellous. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie and today is a build day. Now I'm looking at progressing the incline that runs up from this main area here up into the freight yard. So what do we need to do? Well, if we take a look at this little class 25, we can see that it's broken down into three lots of vans. So we've got a set of vans, a set of containers, another set of vans and a guards van. And we work on the concept that these three wagons are known as triplets. So in the world of breaking things down and shunting operations and all that sort of stuff, we leave the three wagons coupled together rather than try to break every single wagon down. And then in the branch line, not in the branch line station, in the upper freight yard, we will break down the train, reconfigure it and send it then around to the goods yard that's over by the branch line station. And that's the sort of thought process behind it, so that we can bring in other operators and play trains. Lovely. Now, on the front of my little train here, I've got my original Bachmann Class 25 loco. It's got in it, this sounds amusing, a lock sound version 3.5 decoder, and the whole thing cost me £85 sound fitted. And that was the kind of price when we first started down on this slopey road of model railway, let's say. And then obviously prices have just gone ballistic since then. Right, so what do we want to do? Well, we want to send this little train up the incline, and I'll show you how much progress I've made in the past. So as you can see, this area's had a damn good ignoring. So what do I need to do? Well, as you can see from this black and there the white plasticard, I've in the past covered this incline with the white plasticard so I can put in bushes and line side features and everything else. So the first thing I need to do is obviously progress right around the incline with plasticard, and it's 1.5mm sheets that I'm going to cut up. After that, I need to lay cork. Now I've made a mistake here with this cork because I've made it the width of the track, which means you have a quite harsh ballast shoulder. Now I don't need a ballast shoulder because this is quite a rural, infrequently used line, so it will be in some kind of state of neglect, let's say, with only something like a 20-mile-an-hour speed restriction on it. So instead of putting cork just under the track, I will lay cork right across the whole of the plasticard, and therefore we won't have that ballast shoulder. Now, as you can see, there's an incline, and you might think, well, perhaps my locos can't get up it. And I had thought about using the DCC Concepts power base underneath here, but as you can see, my trusty old Bachmann Class 25 hauling 9 wagons and a guards van can easily cope with this, and that's the maximum length of train that the freight yard is going to handle at one time. So that all kind of makes sense to me. So that means it's time to get out some glue, the 1.5mm plasticard and the good old Stanley knife and start work. And let's not kid ourselves, Stanley knives don't only cut plastic. And it's very much trial and error really, isn't it? We're getting there. Now clearly time has gone on and I've sort of got into the knack of cutting these now. So as you can see, I've done 1, 2, 3 pieces of plastic card. And this is the technique I'm kind of using. Now I do apologise if I lean in front of the camera here. It's an awkward angle to film. Now I've got one of these sort of curve drawing type arrangements from when we were kids at school. And we have to draw graphs and all this sort of stuff. So what I've been doing is sort of putting it to the contour of this piece of plywood, which will eventually support a sort of farm area to give me the curve that I need on the plastic card when I cut it. Now, this piece came off here, and this curve isn't any good, so as you can see. So what I do is I drop this onto here, and that then should give me the curve to draw, and then I'll have to cut out that section there. So all I do is draw along this like so, and then you can see hopefully from the curve there the line that I need it to take. And now switching to a fresh blade, can't have enough blades, can you? It's just a case of going freehand on this line. Wish me luck. So it's just a case of doing it as slowly as you can. It sort of suddenly accelerates, but lots of downward pressure. Stay on the line as best you can, and not to put your hand, your supporting hand that is, in front of where the blade's going to go. A mistake I think we've all probably made. So give it a little bit of a bend, and it tends to snap where you've trimmed it. Easy. Right, back to the fitting. Now with the piece I've just cut in place, I can see that I still need to nibble off some of this, but also now I can see that the way this one comes around, this one needs nibbling as well. So if I use my sexy little curve and pop it on here, I can see how much that I actually need to remove. It's a case of just going slowly and sorting it out really. Right, so there's the next bit. Take those bits off. Well, all the pieces of plastic card are now in place, and I've had a change of plan. I'm going to go back to a proprietary glue to stick this stuff to the polystyrene blocks rather than Copydex. I'll use Copydex to glue the track to the cork. So I'll use Sticks-like to stick this down. But before I do that, I'm going to roughen up both sides of the plastic card to make sure that the glues get a good bond. So all I'm using is ordinary glass paper, and you can soon feel that it's pretty well scratched up. So I do that, and then I use the Sticks-like to glue that down. Now, one thing I did remember to do right at the very last minute was to draw around those plasticard sheets, so I have the shape of the cork to cut out now and glue on the top of them. Very last minute stuff. Gluing the cork in place couldn't be much simpler, really, could it? Once I'd realised that I needed to use the upper pieces as a template. And now, of course, we realise why we invest so heavily in manufacturers' catalogues. Of course, it's always best to weather your track down when you're done with sort of frame dirt, sleeper grime, that kind of stuff. But of course, with close to this back scene, this isn't the ideal place to start using one of these rattle cans. So let's go to the garage. Now, to avoid a blocked nozzle, when you're done, turn the can upside down, press the old button and keep it pressed until air comes through. Now, regarding my £8 bargain bridge, it's actually from Lima, which I was quite surprised, but there's some damage at this end here, and this has been glued on somewhere else. So what I thought I would actually do is take back some of this plastic material on both sides, so it will then fit better on top of a pillar sort of thing. So the pillar then will actually the stone pillar will come out to here on both sides. So what am I going to use? I could try and saw it out, but there's nothing like a good old Dremel. So it will sit something like that on top of a pillar. There it works. Right, just need to do the other end. And now we just need it to change colour. Well, as per usual, it's now the following day, and the last thing I did last night was I painted all of the cork track bed, and I really splashed out here. These are the ready mix poster paints, children's poster paints from Hobbycraft, and they come in at a shocking £1 a pop. So all I've used is brown with a bit of black just to darken it down to give me a base colour for the track bed. What else is there? Well, the bridge now has some resemblance to it. It looks a lot better. Of course, it does look a little bit kind of shiny and new, so I'm going to have to start thinking about weathering it down. And I painted the inside sections along the middle there with frame dirt because it has a kind of like a wooden effect on it. But that one there pops in there quite happily. Now, before going any further regarding our bridge, I will need to put a bit of weathering powder on it. Now, this is the side that goes against the wall because of this little bit of damage here, so you'll never see that. So I can have a little experiment here. Now, I've got some weathering powder from Tamir, or Tamir, as some people say. So I'm going for the rust. And there's a little applicator in there. And as I said, this is the not so good side, as it were. So I just want to see how effective this is. I'm not too sure how much these may have dried out. I'm going to have to switch to cotton buds. Well, you can see the discoloration coming in, can't you? Though it's subtle. Let's try something a bit darker. Yeah, it's a bit better, isn't it? A bit more of a weathered feel to it. Anyway, I shall progress with this and get back to you. Well, this is some 10 minutes later, and I've hardly touched the back. Obviously that's against the wall, that was just the trial pieces, but I just put some basic weathering down, a little bit of sort of black sort of sooting, a little bit of rust edging on it, just to take the shine off it. I don't particularly want to go to town on this. I can always touch it up in the future, this front edge with rust streaks, but we'll see how this develops. It's very easy, I find. Well, I do. I put too much on and then of course you can't get the stuff off. So we'll pop this in place once I've cleaned up my hands, etc. Now, turning to track, as usual, I'm using Pico Code 100, and as you saw earlier, I sprayed it with some frame dirt out in the garage. And this line runs from the junction down by the signal box all the way around to where it enters the freight yard. And if you're into block detection, then there is one block with 3 sensors. There's a short sensor to detect the loco arriving at the junction at the bottom, and another section with a sensor to detect the loco arriving before the freight yard, and obviously a sensor for the whole of the main track. So it's quite straightforward. Only 3 sort of sets of wires to go to a BDO 168. Right, enough of that rubbish. Right, let's get around to laying some track. And I use 1602 for my droppers, and I need to run the tracks around here. But here's a little tip: when you're laying track in a straight track, get out your mirror. Because if you're laying track against the wall, it's very difficult to see if your track is actually straight. And using a mirror, you can kind of look down to see if it is. Now, I've just roughly laid the first 2 pieces of track in place. And moving up to the back end of it, we have a little bit of an issue. Here you can see the cables from the track that go down through into the baseboard. But we have a little issue with the levels of this polystyrene, because there is clearly a dip just here, so I'm going to have to pack that out. And what I have done is I've cut out some small pieces of thin cork, and I shall use these to pack out that section. And here you can see it didn't take much to pack it out, but it just took away that little dip. Now, just before we proceed, have you subscribed to the channel or even given it a thumbs up? Because it's the more interactions with the channel, the more people that YouTube will recommend it to. So come on, please don't forget to subscribe. Right, moving on. Now, this curve, I've used a Tracksetter 42-inch curve template to get the curve right, and now I'm going to glue the track down with Copydex. Copydex, it's a glue from our childhood perhaps. It smells of fish, it does half stink. But if you make a mistake, you can just pull the track back up, pull the glue off, and away you go. And of course, when you're finished and you're balancing, you've got no nails or screws or anything to pull out. So in a scenic area, I always use Copydex. So now I think the track is in the right place. So what I do is I give it with a felt tip pen, all I do is I run a line, straight on my painted sleepers, is I run a line along the edge of the track. So when I lift it to start applying the Copydex, I can see where I need to paste it in. Then it's simply a case of sort of paint it into the area where the track will go. You don't need huge amounts of this stuff. And all I do is put the track in place and then get out all my bottles of glue, etc., and weight the track down. So we need to feed the new track into the fish plates. Missed that one. Just like so. Drop the track onto the Copydex. Then, of course, with our trusty mirror, is to make sure that we have the right alignment. Quick check with the mirror. And I think we're good. Well, it's no real surprise that we're back where we started. So this is the old section. And here's the new section. Now I must confess, I was a little bit concerned about the bridge, whether it would actually sag as the loco goes over. It doesn't seem to be the case, but it was certainly something that concerned me. And we'll hold it right there. Well, I hope you agree that that turned out to be quite a useful evolution. The layout's extended now up to that corner, so now it's the case of building the freight yard and getting on with that, and that's the last major piece of track work I've got. I was concerned about the bridge with its fragility and whether it would actually bend, and I had thought about putting in some brass box section to run along. It's still not sort of nailed down, as it were, so if I need to modify it, I can. It's no big deal. The next thing to talk about really is what's happening with these retaining walls. Well, around this section here of the bridge itself, I still have a couple of, viaduct bridge piers left over. So these sort of things here, and cutting these down and painting them up, I think will make a pretty good wraparound around the actual support for the bridge itself. Moving on to the retaining walls in general, I think we're going to have to go down the card route. Now, because of this curve around here, you can't use card at an angle, because if you wanted to put an angle on your retaining wall, because the brick courses then will curl up. So if you use printed card, it has to be vertical. And over in this corner here, as you can see, I've curved it around, and there are brick abutments to sort of give it the air of realism, supporting the retaining wall structure. So I'm left with two choices, whether to go for a more of a larger stone type card, or, as I've shown you over the other side, the smaller sort of brick. I'd like your thoughts. But this is where we're going from here. But of course, once that freight yard is finished, then it's time to crack on with some scenics, because the trains will be running, and at last I've reached the end of the track lane. God, it's been a nightmare, hasn't it? Anyway, we are where we are. I hope you found it interesting. There's a video here and here to keep you posted. Thanks to the patrons. There's the old subscriber button, and please subscribe, it keeps the channel going. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot, take care. Bye bye.